I am Dana K. White of aslobcomesclean.com, and every ish week, whatever, I do these live decluttering Q&As. So if you would like to ask a question for a future thing on a Tuesday, you can go to askdanakWhite.com and submit your questions on the form that is there. Okay, I am just assuming that my microphone is working, so I'm checking. Okay, maybe y'all can actually hear me this week. Goodness gracious, it's been like that too many times, but I tried to check every single thing that I could check before I did. So before I started today. All right, I just want to remind you that this is supported by my Patreon members. So if you would like to join my Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/aslobcomesclean. And members of Patreon get different perks, but one of them is the opportunity to join a super secret Facebook group, which is where you can have conversations, share your personal things, get input from people who are using these same strategies to get their home under control. And they understand why they work, and they're not going to come at you with maybe what everybody says about decluttering, but the way we talk about it here. So just wanted to let you know about that. Okay. Here we go. I'm going to hide that. Right. Let's go with the first question. These are some fun questions this week, like some really fun questions, and I'm excited about answering them. Okay, how do we go about decluttering and organizing a craft space with multiple types of crafting? Should I designate a specific cabinet shelf to a specific crafting type? For example, paper crafting, card making, sewing, crocheting, holiday decorations, to keep it contained to a specific area rather than the room. Okay, so here's what I'm going to say. How do we go about decluttering and organizing? Here's what I'm going to tell you. Start with the, okay, you can hear me. Good. Thank you. Start with the decluttering. Okay. So many times when we are starting to deal with a space that is overwhelming, which typically craft spaces can be overwhelming, right? But when we're thinking about a certain specific space, if we start thinking about organizing and decluttering at the same time, it can be self-defeating, okay? Because organizing is problem solving. Remember that, okay? The other thing is, it's not possible to have this space organized if there is an excess of stuff, if there is clutter in there first. So take organizing out of the question and let's just talk about decluttering. The other beautiful thing about decluttering is that ultimately it achieves what I always wanted from this idea of being organized. Like once I had decluttered a space, I knew what I had, I could find what I needed when I needed it. It looked, felt, functioned organized, okay, just by decluttering. So, but let's just start with just decluttering first. So you asked a crafting space with multiple types of crafting. Should I designate a specific cabinet? Okay, so remember that my 5-step no mess decluttering process, okay, which you're just going to focus on decluttering, this is what I'm going to advise you to follow. If you want to, oh, I thought I had this on here somewhere. Anyway, you can go to aslobcomesclean.com/5, F-I-V-E, if you would like to get a copy of those 5 steps. But the first step is trash. Okay, so before you do anything else, start pulling out the trash in this space, okay? And move on through the next step, the easy stuff that doesn't belong in the craft area. That stuff, but it has an established home somewhere else. You're going to take that stuff to where it belongs. You're removing out the excess so you can actually see what you're dealing with in this space. Get rid of donations, meaning stuff that's like, wait, why do I have this? This just needs to go, okay? That I can get rid of without having to ask myself questions. Then you get into the 2 decluttering questions. Your question is, should I designate a specific cabinet shelf to a specific crafting type? Ultimately, that happens naturally through following these decluttering steps. Okay, so the first question is, if I needed this item, and you're going item by item, you're not pulling everything out of a space. If I needed this item, where would I look for it first? Okay. That you said something about rather than just the room, you know, because I think sometimes people are like, oh, I'd look for this in my craft room. But when you take it there now to your craft room, where in this space would I look for it? And I'm going to get it as close to that spot where I would actually look for it within this overall room as I possibly can. Okay. So as you're doing that, when you come across something that is, let's see, you said like a crochet item, where would I look for my crochet hooks? That's what it is, right? First. Okay. And it's where would you reach first? What is the drawer that you would open, the cabinet that you would open? What is the place where you would look first when you needed your crochet hook? Well, that's where that item is going to go. Okay. So that goes ahead and it creates those spaces, but it's not a creating of a space in theory. It's creating a space based in reality of how you actually function in your home. Okay. Because the problem when you start thinking about how do we go about decluttering and organizing, when you put those two things together and you said, should I designate? That's where we get into, I'm going to plan this all out before I actually get started. Meanwhile, you've got trash, easy stuff, and dead donations that could be out of there. So you don't really have an actual understanding of what you're really dealing with. And you're doing a lot of theorizing. What is the best way to do this? Where is the best place to put such and such? And that is how so many people end up saying, well, I got organized, now I can't find anything. Okay, that we don't do that around here, right? And the reason we don't do that is that we are focused on decluttering. And in the decluttering process, I am putting things in the place where I would look for it first, which means naturally that your crochet stuff is going to end up somewhat together, okay? And your card making stuff is going to end up somewhat together, because as you come across stamps or papers or whatever it is, inks, and you say, where would I look for this first? The vast majority of those, other than, you know, we're people like me, we're all going to have that one outlier thought, you know, but the vast majority are going to end up in this one specific spot. Okay. Because you are going on the instinct of where would I actually look first for this item. But remember that the last step of the process is to make it fit, not by shoving things in, but by embracing the reality of the space that I have. So now that things, you've removed the excess and only what you would actually look for in this space is here, and those things are in the place where you would look for it first, then within that space, we are going to make it usable, get toable, functional, okay? By purging down to the point where I only have what will fit usably and get toably in this space, okay? So as I do that, the first step of that fifth step, make it fit, is to consolidate. So I'm going to, at that point, I have been putting all my crocheting stuff in the place where I would look first for crocheting stuff. Now I'm going to consolidate, and I'm going to, is it crochet thread or yarn? Anyway, I'm going to put all of those items together. I'm going to consolidate that. I may go even farther and put all the pink together and all the green together and all the purple together, you know, so that I'm consolidating, because just the act of doing that so many times reveals more stuff that just can go. Either because I realize I've got 27 different, I want to say skeins, I have no idea, doolollies of crochet thread or yarn or whatever you use to crochet. I have 27 pink. And just so many times that makes me go, oh, well, these 5 are my least favorite and I'm going to let those go or whatever. You know, it just easily helps me get more out of there, because the less stuff I have, the more easily I can keep it under control. Okay. And then the closer I am to this space being usable and functional, whatever. Okay. So go through all the way through that decluttering process, which is going to make this space comparatively so much more organized. Then live with it for a little while. See, is this actually functioning for me correctly? And then you're going to be able to come up with, you know, what would be really helpful here is this specific type of a container or whatever. Okay. Does that make sense? Skeins of yarn. Yay. Okay. Somebody, thank you, Mary Ellen. All right. Next, I hope that was helpful. Okay, here we go. It's one of those questions where sometimes I'm like, do they know me? Anyway, because I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't either. So the question is, I live in an apartment, so I can't remove walls. Y'all, I'm scared to death of removing walls. I probably will never, never say never, but I cannot imagine myself ever removing a wall. So that's not the kind of advice I give anyway. So this is great, right? Okay, craft space is I am trying to organize my craft space in my living room. About a year ago, I just had a major renovation. What is the best way to organize a space 3x7? Again, I talk about decluttering, but the beauty of this is that you got a container. 3x7. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know if that means this is all the space that you have. I really don't. But declutter. Go ahead and go through, because the problem is sometimes when you're like, oh, this is going to be my craft space. These are craft things. I have to get organized one day. I'm not going to actually go through these things and be realistic about everything when I don't have an organizing solution yet. So I might as well just keep it all until the day when I have that. Okay. So instead, I'm going to tell you declutter. Okay. 3x7. I don't know. Is that a desk space? Is that whatever? Go through your stuff. Okay. That is as that space is as close as you can get to take it there now. Okay. Whether it's imperfect or not, whether it has a few drawers, a little bit of a cabinet space, whatever. As you come across craft things, they go to that space. You put them as close as you can to the actual place within that place where you would look for it first. Okay. So if you have a drawer, which is the drawer where you would look first for this specific item? All right. And you take it there and you put it in that drawer. But go ahead and go through the decluttering process, because the key to any space being successful and functional is that you have to only have what will actually functionally for your clutter threshold fit within that space. Okay, so go ahead and go through the decluttering process with this space being your container. Okay, like I am not someone, because here's another time where I'm like, I don't know your exact situation here. I am not someone who can have a ton of stuff neatly put into all these little things and keep it under control, because I have a low clutter threshold. I have tried that over the years. My sweet mother tried so many times to create elaborate systems for me to be able to keep all of my stuff that I thought I needed and that I really wanted and that I collected, but I couldn't maintain that. Okay, so for you, you might be able to have a more elaborate organizing system than me. For me, I just needed to get rid of stuff until I only had what fit into the existing space that I already had, and then embrace that and say, this is what I can handle. This is what I can keep under control. Okay, next. I love this question. I know you were previously an eBay seller. That was me. She's talking about me. I was. And understand the pratfalls of keeping a semblance of organization. As a theater person, I love this because I think you meant pitfalls, and maybe it autocorrected to pratfalls. Pratfalls is like a comedy thing. Like it specifically means falling on your bohiney. And the pratfalls of organization, like that just seems to fit more to me than pitfalls anyway. But okay, I did, however, this is her asking, I did, however, lose my job as a single mom. I defaulted to reselling because I wasn't getting unemployment, and I just have always had a good eye for reselling and have done it previously. Nevertheless, the clutter is out of hand. Is there any way to manage the clutter as a reseller with ADHD? Any tips or advice? Thanks. Okay, so I do have to say here that I did eventually give up on selling as I focused in on other things, but I don't just give the blanket statement, you can't resell if you want your house to be under control, because I know when I was an eBay reseller, we needed that money. Like, she needs this money. Like this is reality for her. So I know there was a time where I read something that said, don't have garage sales. If you want your house to be under control, just give up on garage. And I was like, first of all, you can't tell me what to do because I'm not good at being told what to do. Anyway, also, we were at a phase of our life where I really needed that money, right? Okay, so I'm never going to tell you that. But what I am going to tell you is it all comes down to the container concept, right? Like everything basically that I answer, my answer always starts with, it all comes down to the container concept. For you, this is, if you want it to be under control, embrace the container concept, okay? Embrace the reality of the space that you have, okay? This is your reality. You need to be doing this. But my guess is with ADHD, I have not been diagnosed, but except by many of y'all. I know that for me, when I was in that situation, I never saw a reason not to bring something into my home that I thought might sell at some point. Okay. Like I just brought in. What I wish I would have known then that I do know now is that space has a limit, and that if I have more stuff than can fit in my space, then there is no hope of my house being under control. Okay. So I wish I had understood the container concept at that point. But I also know now how freeing the container concept is, because I needed to make those decisions anyway. Like there were things that stayed in my house because I brought them in only to then realize, oh, they had some kind of a flaw that meant I wasn't going to be able to sell them, or some kind of a, they weren't actually worth anything or whatever, and they would just stay in my house. Okay. But knowing the container concept helps me go, what is container worthy? Well, it's the stuff that's really going to sell. It's the stuff that I know I can sell within X amount of time. Okay. Because seasonal things tend to be a real issue with reselling, is you're like, I can pick up winter coats for like $1 a piece in May, and then all I have to do is hold on to them. Okay. So it's like, and that kind of stuff. Then the season would go by because my house was so out of control that I would forget that I had those. Okay. So, and then I wouldn't sell them, and then they'd stay in there another year. And then by that time they were, getting closer to being out of style or whatever, so it's just having those boundaries and saying, this is going to be my space. It may not be ideal. Okay. But because this is something that you need to do for the money. All right. This space right here is my eBay reselling space. Okay. This shelf of that space is my houseware stuff. This shelf is my kids' clothes stuff. This shelf is my, footwear, blah, blah, blah. Because I know I always did really well with footwear. Anyway, those spaces, having those be defined means that I am so much more picky about bringing things home, which is not bad, right? Like I'm more picky about what do I know for sure is really going to sell. I am so much more likely to check it very carefully, knowing that if I take this home and there's not room on my shelf, then something is going to have to go. And I don't want to bring something home if it's not actually going to be worth reselling. Okay. So just knowing that there's a limit changes everything you bring into your house. Knowing that there's a limit forces, okay, not really forces, but it's very motivating to me to do what needs to be done to get rid of the stuff so that it just keeps things under control. Okay. So really, really embrace the container concept on that. Okay. So this is the amount of space that I have to devote to out of season items that are going to have to be held for 6 months. Okay. So that, really breaking down and saying, this is the space that I'm going to devote to that. This is very helpful. Okay. Advice about printed photos. Recycling bin, mail to people in the photos. Sure. Any of those, whatever you want to do. I feel guilty, but there's so many and I don't want everything framed anymore. Okay. So one of the things that I have done with framed photos, I did this for my mother-in-law. when I was cleaning out her house, and I've done it for myself as well. And that is to, I don't know what it is, where I'm like, oh, these framed photos, I don't want them on my wall anymore, but they take so much space. And I'm like, oh, I can just take them out and put them in an album. So I got a really nice album, and any framed photos that I didn't want on my walls, but I still wanted to keep, I put in there. So it's a big album. I mean, I don't know how big it is. I have no idea, y'all. Anyway, but it's a big album, and I think I was able to put like 10 by 13 pictures in there. Well, that's really fun to flip through, right? Some of the really, really big stuff, I trimmed them down and put it in there. So let that photo album be the container, which will then help you go, these are the ones that are worth keeping in this situation. This is the space that I have available to give to it. And it just naturally sorts out things. And then maybe put out a family text or Facebook message or something and say, hey, I'm getting rid of these. Anybody want them? Okay. Like, I don't have the time or the bandwidth to be able to sort them out and send them to everybody, but does anybody else want these? That kind of a thing. It's just hard when I say stuff like that, because I'm like, but I used to be the person who would have said, yes, I'll take them. And then anyway, but you just need to get them out, or you do that. And sometimes you'll do that and realize, oh, now that I have given them real space in my home in this photo album, it helps me see that I had 16 of very similar pictures, and now one of those has a place of honor, and then I'm willing to get rid of the other 15. Okay. Dana, especially interested in where would I look for this first when it's a new place and not all zoned yet? How are you handling this? Because y'all know I moved last November. It's hard to believe it's been almost a year. I'm sure you have new insights in your process as you've had a move since you've become an expert. Would love to hear your favorite aha on the process. Okay, so first of all, I know some people will say the word zone. I don't use that word. I put things in the place where I would look for it first. And that generally, like we talked about in one of the questions at the beginning, that generally means that, as I put crochet hooks in the place where I would look for it first, and it's there, and then the place where I would look for a skein of yarn, because Mary Ellen let me know that's really what it was called. Generally, those will go, and so that naturally zones things, okay? And then the consolidating of things naturally breaks that down even more, okay? So I don't necessarily do that, but because here's the thing, when you say things aren't zoned yet, it's like, that feels like a planning, which is not bad, but for me, so often backfires. So it's better for me to ask, where would I look for this first? And the real question here is, how do you do that when you're in a new home and you've never looked for this item in this home before? Okay, well, I mean, homes generally have, even though my new home is very different than my old home, they have a kitchen, right? They have a, bathrooms, they have a living area, that kind of a thing. So it feels a little woo-woo at first, except you get kind of used to it. But I would literally pick something up out of the box, the packing box, and I would ask myself, if I needed this item, where would I look for it first in this house? And I went with that instinct. And it worked pretty well. Now, sometimes, and I have a video coming up later in the year about this, sometimes I would not know for sure, because my current kitchen does not have cabinets above the stove. Okay, it's an island. The stove is on an island. So the cabinets are back here. Well, that meant that all of my spices, and a lot of the things that I would use when I was working on my stove, there was not an equivalent. There was not an equivalent place in my new house. So I had to just go, okay, and I would put myself in that situation. I would say, I'm standing at the stove right now. If I needed this item, where would I look for it first? And I would be like, I think I would look over there. Well, then I lived with it for a while and found that I was consistently looking in the drawer right here next to my stove. And so I moved it and I changed it, but I had to have a place to put it. So I went with the best answer, most instinctual answer I could have at the time. And then over time, as I lived with it, then I would adjust that. Okay. Oh, this is a good question. I'm a new follower, or you were back in when you asked the question. Um, of your books, which one should I read first? Okay, so here's how I explain this. How to Manage Your Home Without Losing Your Mind is for the person who is just completely overwhelmed in your home. Like, what in the world? Why is this so hard for me when it seems to be so easy for other people? Okay, that's what that is. Meaning it's going to talk you through going from completely overwhelmed to, okay, I can do this. So I do cover decluttering in there, but I do a lot of talking about daily routines and getting through the mental blocks and all that I had about daily routines and what it meant to keep my house under control. And then Decluttering at the Speed of Life is diving deep into decluttering. So it teaches my 5-step process in depth and then applies that process to different areas of your home and different relationships in your life. So using the 5-step process to help your spouse, your children, your friend, your older relatives, that kind of thing. And so that one is like all about decluttering. You can read them in any order. It's fine. Organizing for the Rest of Us. I think it's up there. It is available. I mean, like it's the short snippet tip style version of everything. Okay. And it's got other, like cleaning tips and stuff like that too, with pictures in case that's the thing. So it's very flip throughable. Lots of people like to say that they like to just leave it in the bathroom so that people in their family happen to look through it too. Anyway, that's been very successful for a lot of people. But so that one has fewer words. The other one, if you're like, I need to wrap my brain around this, that's where I recommend How to Manage and Decluttering at the Speed of Life. Okay. This one is a good question and it's hard. Okay. So it's hard to answer questions like this, but I'm going to just give some thoughts on it. I am the only person that cooks and cleans the kitchen. I have decluttered it to how it functions best for me, but my husband keeps buying me dishes and gadgets I do not need or want. How do I make him understand without hurting his feelings? I don't know, because I don't know exactly the nuances here, but the container concept and one in, one outing being very, like, thank you so much. And then looking for a space for it and getting rid of something else, that maybe he got you last Christmas. Wait, like that kind of thing, being very open about, I've really been working on the kitchen. I'm trying to do this. And so I'm going to get rid of these old dishes that you got me 2 months ago and put these new ones in. Sometimes that can be something to help people realize, oh, okay, it's not just this endless, I should get her everything that I see. She's being very, very picky about what it is that she keeps. But again, it's hard to know, because these are all like, this is loving and kind. And so you want to be grateful, right? And I mean, you didn't say, so I keep telling him. So, but maybe just being open and honest, saying, I'm really working on this and I've learned some things that I didn't know before, which is the way for me to keep this space under control is to only have what I personally can handle. And I've kind of got it at that point. So if you see something that you think I would like, send me a text with it and I'll let you know if I think that might be it. Cause I love some of these things, but I've found that I can't keep everything, so like blaming the container, blaming your clutter threshold, just being open and honest about that would be what I would say. But you obviously wouldn't be grateful because it's very sweet and kind. Okay. I am going to, what time is it? Okay. I'm going to answer one more and then I'll answer a few from the comments as well. If you're going through a box of stuff that makes for, I love this question. If you're going through a box of stuff that makes for great stories, what's a good way to go live where others can join the stream and watch it later? I've never Zoomed. Love the books, podcasts, and videos. How fun, how fun is this? Like, I think that's kind of a fun idea. Here's just off the top of my head. Obviously, I've never taught people to do this. And so I don't know. And I think for some people it would be self-defeating, but I think for other people, this is a great idea. Okay. Like, this is important to you as you go through things and you want to tell the family stories. One thing that you could do is set up a private Facebook group for just family members, and let them know what it is that you're going to do. Like say, hey, I am going through some things that belong to Grandma Jones, and I want to tell these stories about them. I've got to get rid of some stuff, but I'm going to tell these stories because this is our family history, whatever you want to do. Set up a private Facebook group. You can go live within that group, and then they can either join live or they can come back and watch it later. But just be really clear if you're getting rid of something that, yeah, I'm sticking it in my donate box, whatever, so that people don't like 5 years later watch the video and they're like, I wanted that. You're like, no, okay, I don't know. You have to be really clear what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it. Okay. And say, hey, if you let me know by such and such date that you wanted such and such, I will put it in a very specific place that is limited because it's a container, and you need to pick it up by such and such date or whatever. I would just set some parameters there. So it's just to be, I'm thinking of all the things that could happen in that. Okay, let's, oh, I love this. So Domestic Chris says, I also just recently moved less than 30 days ago, and where would I look for this first has been immensely helpful. It feels like, oh, but I won't know. We don't know anyway. Remember that. When I talk about where would I look for it first, sometimes people have a problem with it. And I think it's because they're like, well, but I wouldn't be confident it would be there. Nobody's asking that. Okay. We are literally saying, where would I look first, even if I wasn't confident it was going to be there. So when you think of it that way, and you're really truly going with where would I look for it first, what is the instinct here? That is what works in these situations. Okay. Love it. Yeah, I think this is great. Like, this is in answer to her husband keeps buying her more stuff. But yeah, being open and honest about, because here's the thing. People who live with you know that you have struggled, right? So as you're working on this stuff, I'm always like, just work on it first, work on your own things. But as maybe your family starts to realize, oh, okay, wow, the kitchen looks nice or whatever, being open and honest about what it is that you're doing here. And I've realized how much of an impact the clutter was having, something like that. Question. If I have 3 kids, 7, 6, and 3, oldest is medically dependent, I have a bunch of doom boxes and clutter in every closet and cabinet in the garage. Where should I start? Thanks. Okay, so I always recommend that you start in the most visible space first. It sounds like you're overwhelmed. Sounds like you could start anywhere, right? So you need a place to start. So start in the most visible space first, meaning if your entryway is cluttered, start there first, because if you start there, you're going to see your progress. The people around you living in your home are going to see the progress as well. And it's going to inspire you to do more. Okay. It's going to inspire you to declutter again sooner. Where my problem when I used to start in, because you have so many different boxes that you could do, you start with one that was in the garage. Well, it's like I spent all this time, I was building some decluttering momentum. Okay, I'm really proud of myself for getting through that box. And yet I look around my house, it doesn't look any different. Okay, because there's all these other things to deal with. So work in that visible space first. The next space being the living room, because if your family is living in that space, it's really going to make it easier to live there, make it easier to enjoy your home. Your family is going to feel and notice what's different. And that is going to encourage you and build decluttering momentum over time. Okay. What do I do when I've hit a decluttering plateau? I need to reduce more for my sanity, but I'm attached to my stuff. Really embrace the container concept. Okay. Meaning I am attached to this stuff, but the space that I have is the space that I have. And I'm going to just say, I'm going to let the space make the decision. And so that it's so incredibly freeing. So try that. And also acknowledge your clutter threshold. Okay. So when you say you're attached to your stuff, but you also acknowledge that you have a clutter threshold. I can't handle this amount of stuff. It allows you to look at something differently and say, I love this thing. This thing means so much to me, but I can't handle it. And it allows me to let go of this thing without rejecting it. It just frees me in so many ways to say, I wish I could keep this. If I could handle more stuff, I would absolutely keep this, but I can't handle it. Okay. It's just beyond what I can handle. And then you let go of that. It makes you be able to keep your house under control a little bit more easily. And then it makes it that much easier the next time and the next time. Okay. Let's see. Decluttering the basement, lots of boxes of craft stuff and other stuff. Trying to do the take it there now and container limits, but I don't want to dump the box to see what is my favorite. Okay, so I think focusing on going item by item instead of box by box is good, because here's the thing. And you very well may be so much better at this stuff than I ever was. But when I had boxes of stuff, even if it was labeled crafts, there was usually a lot of extra junk in there for me. Like that, because that's just how I roll. So instead of saying, well, it's this whole box that I'm going to take, say, okay, in this space where I am, so that I'm not just stuff shifting at all, I am going to look in this box first, because that's one of my big rules, right? I have to look, because so many times I assume, oh, well, it says crafts on the outside, so that's got to be all crafts. It's never all crafts, right? Okay, so look in that box first and declutter that box before you do anything. So that means I'm going to pull the trash out if there's any trash in there. If there's, paper that I thought was great and now it's yellowed or whatever. See if look through the box and see, is there anything in here that's easy? Anything that does have an established home elsewhere in the house, but for some reason it ended up in this box down in the basement. Okay. You take that, you remove those things to get the excess out until you're down to just what is crafts. And then you take as much as you can carry in one handful, not in the box, but in one handful, where you say, okay, this paper, where would I look for this first? I would look for it first in that cabinet up there. Is there anything else in here that I can also take at the same time and go do that? Okay. And sometimes that's going to make you easily sort as you go, well, I don't want to take a trip for that item, which then means it's not actually as important to me, which then means I can go ahead and let it go. Okay. Let's see. I can do maybe one more, right? What time is it? Yeah, I can do one more. Okay. Hubs is on board decluttering theoretically, but is still wanting me to keep things just in case storage is limited in our home. How should I handle this situation with him? So utilize the container concept. Okay. Like, this is something that's important to him. Okay. Then, this is the space that we have. So the beauty of the container concept is that the answer is always yes. Okay. Meaning, we're not asking, do you think you might ever need this? We are asking, where would you look for it first? Awesome. Okay. Take it there now. All right. This space is full. So what else are you willing to get rid of? Like, what do you want to get rid of for this item? Well, then that so often reveals, oh, wait, this is, doesn't actually need to stay, because when I look at these other things, I realize I'm not willing to get rid of something else. But just letting that process of taking it there now and saying, okay, sure, of course you can keep it. Just what else are we going to get rid of so there's room for this? And not, as I know, as a wife, sometimes I might tend to be like, well, then what are you wanting to get rid of? I'm not saying you would do that, but like, I have to sometimes stop myself from being like, but it's like, okay, sure. That's absolutely great. What in here can we get rid of to make room for it? Okay. And that just starts to teach this whole concept without it being, I'm lecturing you. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's an experiential learning process where you are seeing for a fact this space is full. So, there is no room for this item. So we have to make room. It's all very logical in the process and works really well with other people. Okay. I wish that I could answer more questions, but I have an appointment that I have to get to here in a little bit. So just as a reminder to y'all, If you would like to ask questions that I might answer on future lives, you can go to askdanakWhite.com. And I also wanted to remind y'all, thank you so much to those of you who have answered my survey. I would love it if you have not answered it yet. I am gathering information about those characteristics or things about those of us who struggle with this type of organizing, decluttering issues. Okay, like we tend to be very creative, highly intelligent people, and I want to know more. Okay, because I can say from my own experience, but I would love to have information from y'all. So it's a chance for you to brag on yourself, and because it is a common thing that I hear all the time and was my own experience, that I was like, how is it that I can be very successful and even very organized in other areas of my life, but my house is like this thing that I couldn't even understand why it kept consistently staying totally out of control. Okay, so that disconnect is often something that can make people like us feel hopeless and helpless. Okay, so I would love to get your information there. All right, I will talk to y'all next week.